Hey drummers, how's it going? I hope you're all keeping well this week. So today I'm going to bring you a story time. This story that I'm about to tell you happened 6 years ago, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. It is possibly not one of the worst gigs I've ever played, but definitely one of the worst situations I've ever been put into while playing a gig, if you can kind of think of it like that. So this happened 20th of May 2016. Still remember the date. When you hear the story, you'll understand why. 2 months prior to this, I just bought a new car. Now, it wasn't fresh, brand new car, but it was a 2010 Toyota Avensis. It was an estate, so it was a big car. The one with the big massive boot on it, or the big massive trunk, depending on where you live. And the idea was basically I could get most of the drum kit in the trunk or the boot of the car, and then put the bass drum in the back. And it certainly did that. It was a big car. It was a little too big. It turned out I didn't need that much space, but I was very happy with it. And I had to get the loan for the car, but got the loan and was very happy to buy the car. And for the first 2 months, it was driving perfect, nothing wrong with it. I was very happy with my purchase. So on this particular date, the 20th of May 2016, I was booked to play a wedding up in Louth. Now, I'm the other side of Ireland, the west side of it. Louth's kind of northeast. It takes about 3.5 hours to get there, maybe 3 if you can get it in good time. I got there, the car got me there fine. There was no problem with that. And this particular venue is quite a swanky venue. It's one of these that they have the big metal gates at the front. You have to buzz in and explain who you are before they open up the gates. So it's a prestigious, well-known, kind of really nice place to get married. You know, it's going to cost a lot of money to get married in this place. So I drive in, and the first, you have to drive about 5 minutes before you hit the venue after you get through these big, massive metal gates. And I eventually get to the car park. So I'm driving around. I'm like, where's a good place to park this car? Because it was, still relatively new. I had new car syndrome. I didn't want, anybody to, bang their door up against it or anything like that. And if that happened, that would have been just like the best thing in the world compared to what actually did happen. So anyway, I find this one spot. I think that's a nice, safe place to leave my car. So I reverse into it. I'm like, okay, yeah. And I'm going to go into the venue now. I'm going to see what time they're at the wedding, because when you play weddings, you're there for a very long time. You could be, in Ireland, you arrive around 7:30, maybe 8:30 in between that time. And you're not getting out of that venue until 1 o'clock in the morning. You're probably not finishing music till 1 o'clock, because it just goes on. It just goes on and everything runs late. So, yeah, I parked the car up and I'm walking out the car, and I still remember to this day, I kind of look back at the car. I was like, yeah, that's a nice looking car. I'm really happy with that purchase. And I give the fob a beep and it locked, and I went into the venue. So went in there, met the other guys that I was playing with, and the manager told us, look, they're really running on time. So this was great, because, I think it was, I can't remember the exact time, but it must have been about 8 o'clock or something. They said, we'll be probably ready for you in half an hour. So in this particular venue, they let us wait in this room where they give us coffee and, there's biscuits and stuff like that. So we went down into this room. We, got a coffee and we were talking, letting, each other know how we've been keeping and any news and back and forth, basically just having a chat. Then the next thing, the door swings open and this drunk guy just walks straight in. And he's just off his face, and he's holding a cigarette in his hand, and he's ossified completely. And he just walks in and he goes, "Sorry guys, you don't have a puffer, a puff for the puffer and a puffer." And we were like, what is with this guy? He was off his face, clearly drunk. And I said, what are you looking for? A lighter? He wanted a lighter for his cigarette. And I said, listen, I don't smoke, and nobody in the room had one. So he just kind of like, and he kind of like stumbled his way out of the room, and then he just went off. So we were just like, okay, well, there's always 1 or 2 drunk people at a wedding. So we didn't take any notice. We just went back, hey, how are you? You keeping well? How are the kids? And then maybe 20 minutes after that, the manager of the hotel comes in and she goes, we're ready for you now. So you can start packing in your gear in about 5-10 minutes. And I'm just like, this is great. If we go on at this time, I'm finished by 12 o'clock, which is usually an hour before we finish. So I'm like, this is excellent. I'm going to be on the road early. I'm going to get home early. This is turning out to be pretty good gig. So I go go up to the front of the hotel because from where we are, we're kind of like in the basement of the hotel. And I have to go up the front to get in the car, to drive around the back, to load in that way. So I'm walking out the front of the hotel and I'm walking over to my car and I'm looking down at the ground and I'm just walking over. And then the next thing, I look up and there's a Toyota Avensis Estate and the bumper is completely smashed in. The headlight is smashed to pieces and the car has moved about, I'd say 2 to 3 foot in the right hand, like completely out to the right side, smashing up against another car. I was like, what the hell? This is, and I looked at it, it was my registration, and I just was like, I couldn't believe this. What the is going on? So I looked down and I'm like, no, straight away I'm like, complete denial. This couldn't be possibly my one. So I get the fob out and press it, and of course it unlocks. I'm like, oh my God, my car. I was like, this shouldn't happen. And it's not even 3 months old. And the front of it is just destroyed. It's completely crushed on one side. And it's, I don't know at this point, because it's moved that 3 feet to smack up against the other car, what the damage is on the other side. And I'm just like, my heart is sinking. I can't believe that this has happened. And what the worst part is, I'm kind of, all this, by the way, is happening in a couple of seconds. This realization of what's happening and all these thoughts are going through my head. It's obviously a hit and run. The person's hit the car and gone. And that's even worse because there's nobody going to pay for it. It's going to come out of my insurance, which ultimately means that I have to pay for it. So I'm just like, this is the worst thing in the world. I'm pissed off. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm nearly in tears. It's just the worst thing in the world. Then I'm staring at the car, and then the next thing I hear, don't move that car. Don't move that car. Don't move that. And I'm like, what's going on? And I look down, I look over at the front of the hotel, and I see this white car, and there's 3 people surrounding it with the manager of the hotel, their 2 hands on the bonnet of the car, just screaming, don't move this car, don't move this car. And so I look down there, I'm like, what's going on? And then I look back at my car, and I could suddenly like click. It's like, oh my God, that's the person that's probably ran into my car. So I make a legger, I'm running straight, like beeline for that car. I'm like running down. I'm like, hey. So I was like, what's going on? Did this guy just smash into cars? He was like, this guy's just after smashing into about 3 cars in the car park. I was like, he's after smashing it. My car's destroyed up there. And then this guy just goes, okay, what you need to do right now is you need to just calm down. Okay. And it was like, this guy had so much authority when he was speaking. Turns out he was a cop. All right. So he was like, listen, I'm a member of An Garda Síochána, which basically is the Irish version of the cops. And he goes, this is a serious incident. What's going on here now? This gentleman is clearly drunk, and I'm taking over the situation until an on-duty member of An Garda Síochána, a cop, shows up. I was like, wow, this guy's on the ball. He's using all the correct words. So I was just like, I'm looking over, and I look in the driver's seat, and it's the same guy that came bursting into the room looking for a cigarette lighter. I just wanted to smack him right in the face. So he's ossified completely. He's drunk off his ass. And there's a girl sitting in the passenger side. So I was like, I'm really, really upset, but I'm in a way there's kind of relief because at least I have the guy. He's in the car. There's a cop there. So it's kind of a really good situation for a bad situation. So he then, the cop, the off-duty cop, who's actually in the wedding, he's related to either bride or groom. I never found out, but he puts his head in the window at the driver, and he's like, "Okay, I'm seizing this vehicle. I'm going to take the keys out." And then your mom was like, "You're not touching the keys of the car." He's like, "Sir, I'm taking the keys out. I'm seizing this vehicle until an on-duty cop gets here." So he pulls out the keys, and then I'm kind of like, well, what will I do? What am I supposed to do? And then the off-duty cop says, look, you just have to wait until somebody on duty comes here. They're going to take a statement from you. This guy's definitely going to get in trouble because he's clearly drunk. I'm going to give a statement, and it'll be fine because it'll come out of his insurance. So I'm thinking this is really not a bad kind of way that it's ending. So that was fine. And I go, right, I better take his insurance details. Of course, there's no speaking to him because he's just like, anybody who says anything to me, he just kind of looks through them because he's so ossified. She, the passenger, the one that's sitting next to him, just starts crying. She just starts bawling her eyes out. And I'm like, oh, what a situation. Then my phone goes off and it's the band. They're like, yo, come on. They're kind of waiting for us. Where are you? And I was like, look, somebody's just after smashing into my parked car. I don't know. I can't leave because I have to give I have to give it a statement to the cops. I don't know what I'm going to say because I wasn't even there. And they were just like, well, you got to get in here fast. And I was like, well, I can't. I have to wait until, the cops come. And so I go over and I take a picture of the insurance details that's on the front of the car. And man, we're waiting another 20 minutes before any cop shows up. Eventually a cop comes down and I go straight over to him. I said, look, here's the situation. I'm playing in the wedding there. I've got to go in now soon or because the bride and groom are waiting for us, so I need to make this statement and drive around. And of course, my car's in the exact same position, smacking up against the other car. So, we have to wait for that person to come back to assess the damage. And this is just, my stress level just keeps going up and up. It was a fucking nightmare. So, I eventually make a statement and I'm like, listen, I don't know. I was inside, came back out, and my car's moved 3 foot, smashing up against another car, and the front is completely destroyed. So the cop comes over to where the car is, has a look at everything, and then he says, you're going to have to move it from the position. I was like, well, I've got to go around the back anyway. So I start moving it. I get in the car, and thank God it starts up. But, it could be only cosmetic, but it could be the tracking could be off. Maybe it's some damage is done to the inside of the engine, which is not going to cause it to run, or maybe it's just completely broke. I don't know. So I switch it on and the engine's running fine, and I eventually get it out of the spot it's in. And the other side that was smashed up against the other car, there wasn't much damage done at all. The other car was fine, and the guy that owned that car said, look, I'm not going to press any charges against him at all. I'm not going to go through the insurance because it was the smallest dent. So that was fine. I get my gear, I'm driving, and I'm flustered. It's just a horrible situation. I drive all the way around the back, and of course the bumper's fucking hanging off. The light's smashed, and I still have got to do the gig and drive me back 3.5 hours, down motorways and through country roads, because this venue isn't particularly easy to get to. So I'm like, okay, get the gear. So I grab all the gear, bring it in, and of course I hate everybody in the venue that's related to this guy. So I bring it in, set up the drum kit, and I said to the guys, I only set up half. I was like, look, if any of you can kind of throw it together, that'd be really good. It would really help me out. So that was fine. I go back out because I have to go see what the story is and make sure that everything's settled there. So I go back out and they're interviewing or taking a statement from the drunk driver. Meanwhile, the girl is getting picked up by somebody else, and she just goes off bawling, crying. And I said, do you need me again? Because I need to, go back in there and work, because we're about to kick off we've already delayed the first dance. So this whole thing has maybe taken 40 to 50 minutes. So we're running about 20 minutes late than we should be. And the cops were like, listen, you may as well go now because we've got everything we need from you, and you'll be hearing from me in a couple of days. Turns out they didn't even contact me ever again. The cops were really, really, in terms of calling me up and letting me know anything, they didn't tell me a damn thing. I'm sure they helped out with the insurance company, but that was a different story altogether. So I go in and I set up the rest of the drum kit. We're all ready to go. It's mic'd up. And immediately I've just run in, put my shirt on, run back and start playing the first dance. And of course it's a lovely first dance song, and really romantic, and I'm just sitting behind my drum kit. I'm like, I fucking hate the world. But so we're playing away, and then we play the first hour and we're gonna take a break. So we take a break and I just go out to assess the damage again. Still can't believe that this has happened. And it's just screwed. And so when I switched, because it was now dark outside, switch on the light, the light was actually working. It was just smashed from the inside, and it was no longer the light wasn't facing out, it was facing that way. So I didn't know when I'd be driving home, was I going to be blinding people that were coming on the other side of the road? It was just it was just so many questions going through my head. So that was fine. and I go back. We're going to play the second half of the set. So we go playing the second half. We're 3 songs in. And the next thing, I'm looking out, I'm playing my drums, and who's out with a pint of beer in his hand, dancing away, like having great fun? It was the bloody drunk driver. The guy that smashed into my car, just woohoo, having a great time, knocking back more booze, more booze. I have to play another hour, an hour and a half, staring at this guy that just smashed up my car, drunk off his ass, jumping around the place. I was so pissed off. But so I'll never, ever forget that gig. We finished up the gig pretty early actually that night, because they just wanted more DJ. So we finished up the gig. Of course, I mean, everything in my, it took everything in my power not to go over to the guy at the end of the night and just say, you're a fucking asshole. But I didn't. Packed up the gear, and then I was like, right, I got to get this home. So luckily it drove perfectly. I don't think there was anything wrong with the tracking. And but what a night! I'll never forget it. It was just an absolute nightmare. And it was one of those situations where what really annoys me is that when I parked the car, I was like, this is the safest place to park the car. I could have just drove around the back, but hindsight's 2020. And then after that, just to give you an after story. So I went home went home that night, woke up the next day and just went out and looked at it again. I was just like, destroyed. And it turns out when we got the insurance going and everything, of course it was Sunday the next day, so no insurance companies were open. So I couldn't tell anybody what was going on. But it took about a week to get things going between for the insurance company to get back to me, and it turned out that it wasn't his car, it was his girlfriend's car. And what had happened was he was off his face drunk, and she was off her face drunk, and what they both were too drunk to be there. So he decided that he would drive her home, because a taxi was going to take more than 45 minutes to get them, because this venue was out in the sticks. So he decided to get into the car, into the girlfriend's car, because he thought he was more sober than her. And this guy was barely able to stand. And what had happened was he was in his car and he reversed out of his car parking space, smashed into a car at the back of him, then circled around the car park, came around this way. And then this was the way to go out, with your venue being this side. I'm probably doing a terrible job explaining this, but he had to spin around here, do a U-turn, and then to go straight out there to take a left to get out of the venue. What he did was come along here. 2 of the people that were surrounding the car were walking this way, and then he didn't see them, so he came out accelerating around the bend, saw them, did a twist of the car, and then turned and smashed straight into my one, knocking my one up against the other guys. Then he reversed out of mine. They told him to stop. He was just, he told him to F off, and then he just drove off. And then another person stopped him at the corner because he nearly smashed into another car. And then the manager came out because she'd seen the whole thing on camera. And that's what had happened. So luckily the insurance company did pay out as a thing called insurer's concern. And what that means is that out of good graces, so I still don't actually understand, but out of good graces, the insurance company will pay for the damage, because sometimes just the person's insured and not the car, or that was something to the effect that it was back in 2016. And I think I eventually got the car. So that was May that it happened, May 20th. And I got the car fixed the following September. That's how long it took. So I was driving around with the damage, as you can see in the video, with a big dented in bumper and one headlight, and there was something also bad to the inside of the car that they had to fix, but it wasn't a big fix. I don't know what it was, but in total the insurance came back with a €4,000 fix that they argued between the 2 insurance companies. I think it eventually was 3,200. But what a fucking asshole. And all because he drank and drive. So that'll be a lesson. Don't drink and drive. And also remember, just because a car parking space looks like a good car parking space doesn't necessarily mean it is. But anyway, that's my story. I don't know what I'm going to call this story time. The day the drunk smashed into my car. I think I can pick a better one. Well, you know what it is because it'll be up in the title of the video. Anyway, that's it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Did this ever happen to you? I really hope it didn't. But since that car is gone, actually, I got rid of it. That was a bad luck car. Everything that could possibly go wrong with that car went wrong. Straight after that, the injectors went. So I had to buy a new injector. And then another time I was driving back from my sister's house, and the bonnet of the car popped up while I was driving and smashed the front windscreen, and then popped back down, and I had to get that fixed. That set me back about 700. And then that finally got, so that was it. I was like, okay, well, nothing else could possibly go wrong with the car. Then I think about 2 months after that, the other 3 injectors, I fixed one injector, the other 3 injectors went, which would have cost me another 1,000. So I just got rid of it after that. It was a bad luck car. Anyway, that's it for this one. Take it easy, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Guys, hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you like what you're seeing here today, you can see a lot more videos. Just click on any of them here on the screen.